I stood frozen as my father's voice boomed through the speakers. Dina will give her Manhattan penthouse to Brittany as a wedding gift. 200 guests turned to stare. My sister clapped excitedly while her new husband smirked. Dad had planned this public ambush perfectly. My legs trembled as he thrust the microphone toward me. Then a tall man in a charcoal suit stood from table 9. "Touch her assets again," he declared firmly, "and you'll lose yours." The hall fell silent. Who was this stranger? The microphone trembled in my father's hand. For the first time in my 32 years, I saw genuine fear flash across his face. The stranger's words hung in the air, slicing through the expensive perfume and champagne bubbles of my sister's wedding reception. I'd spent my whole life watching my parents dote on Brittany. From the moment she was born when I was 4, she became their sun while I orbited in the shadows. Her finger paintings covered the refrigerator while my straight-A report cards were met with distracted nods. Her ballet recitals warranted professional photographers while my academic decathlon wins barely earned a mention at dinner. "You're the responsible one, Deanna," my mother would say. "Brittany needs more encouragement." This explanation followed me through childhood like an unwelcome shadow. When college applications arrived, I applied for every scholarship possible, knowing my parents had been setting aside money for Brittany's education since her birth. "We just always knew she'd need more support," my father explained when I questioned the disparity. I worked 3 jobs through college: mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons in the library, and weekends waiting tables. I graduated with honors and minimal debt through sheer determination. Meanwhile, Brittany attended NYU with full parental support, changing her major 4 times before settling on communications. When she decided communications wasn't right after all and wanted to try fashion merchandising, our parents funded that too. "Your sister is finding her path," my mother explained when I expressed concern about their retirement savings. After college, I fought my way into Manhattan's cutthroat real estate market. For 5 years, I worked 70-hour weeks, building a client base and reputation. When I finally saved enough for a down payment on the penthouse in the historic Westerly building, it represented everything I'd worked for. 3 bedrooms with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, original hardwood floors, and a rooftop garden where I could finally breathe above the city's chaos. "It's awfully big for just one person," was my mother's only comment when I gave them the tour 3 years ago. The hints about Brittany's wedding started dropping like anvils about 6 months ago. "Of course you'll contribute meaningfully to your sister's big day," my mother said during Sunday brunch. "Family comes first." 2 months ago, during the first official wedding planning dinner, my father casually mentioned that Brittany and Ryan might need a proper home to start their lives together. I nodded politely and changed the subject. Last month, my father cornered me in the kitchen during a family dinner while everyone else was having dessert in the dining room. "Deanna, we need to discuss something important," he began, his voice taking on the authoritative tone I'd grown to recognize as trouble. "What is it, Dad?" He placed his hand on my shoulder, heavy with expectation. "Your sister is starting a new chapter. She needs stability, a foundation." "I've already agreed to cover the honeymoon costs," I reminded him. "That's $20,000. He waved his hand dismissively. "Money isn't the issue here. It's about family legacy." I felt a chill. "What do you mean?" He looked me straight in the eyes. "The penthouse. It should go to Brittany and Ryan." My mouth fell open. "My home? You want me to give away my home?" "Not give away," he corrected quickly. "Transfer within the family. Keep it where it belongs." "It belongs to me. I bought it." His expression hardened. "With connections I helped you make. The Westerly building was an exclusive listing. You think you got that on your own?" That was the moment I realized my father had been planning this all along. He'd already promised Brittany my home, my sanctuary, my reward for years of hard work and independence. He'd been telling her it was just a matter of time before the penthouse would be hers. As the wedding reception now sat in stunned silence, I locked eyes with the stranger in the charcoal suit. Somehow, in that moment, I knew he understood everything I'd been through. And for the first time in my life, someone was standing up for me. The weeks leading up to Brittany's wedding had been a masterclass in emotional manipulation. After my father's shocking demand about the penthouse, my phone began buzzing with daily calls from my mother. "Your father meant well," she insisted the day after our confrontation. "We just want the best for both our girls." "By taking away my home?" I asked. No one's taking anything. We're asking you to be generous with family. Her voice took on the disappointed tone that had worked so effectively on me as a child. Brittany has always looked up to you. The calls continued, escalating in emotional intensity. One day she'd use guilt. After all, we sacrificed for you. The next day came bargaining. We could help you find somewhere new. Then came anger. You've always been selfish with your sister. Finally, tears. I just don't understand how we raised such a cold-hearted daughter. My best friend Jenna was the only person who saw through it all. We met for coffee at our favorite spot near Bryant Park 3 weeks before the wedding. Something's not right about this whole situation, she said, stirring her latte. Ryan's family is loaded. They could buy a dozen penthouses. I know, I sighed. But my parents have always seen Brittany as entitled to whatever I have. Jenna leaned forward. What does Ryan do again? He works for his father's development company. Luxury properties, mostly. Her eyes narrowed. And where exactly is your penthouse? Upper East Side, the historic Westerly. The building that's been fighting off developers for years? The one with rent-controlled apartments and elderly residents refusing to move? My stomach dropped. How did you know about that? It was in the Times last year. Some big developer was trying to buy out the building but couldn't get enough units. She squeezed my hand. Deanna, be careful. The bachelorette weekend in the Hamptons was the next phase of the pressure campaign. Brittany had invited 8 friends to a mansion her future father-in-law owned. I'd paid for the catering and spa treatments as my gift. On the second night, after several glasses of champagne, Brittany gathered her friends in the living room. So after the honeymoon in Bali, Ryan and I will be moving into the most amazing place, she gushed. My sister's penthouse in the Westerly? 3 bedrooms, Central Park views, original moldings from 1928. Her friends squealed with delight while I sat frozen on the couch. She had described my home down to details only someone planning to live there would bother to memorize. Brittany, I said quietly after her friends dispersed, we need to talk. She blinked innocently. About what? You just told everyone you're moving into my home. Oh, she waved her hand dismissively. I might have gotten ahead of myself, but Dad said it's basically a done deal. It's not a done deal. It's not any kind of deal. It's my home. Her eyes narrowed, the innocent facade dropping. Family helps family, Deanna. You've always had everything handed to you. The good grades, the career, the connections. I laughed in disbelief. Handed to me? I worked for everything I have. While living in Mom and Dad's house, eating their food, using their connections, she stepped closer. Do you know how hard it is being your little sister? Nothing I do could ever measure up to perfect Deanna. Her voice cracked with practiced precision. For once in my life, I just want something special that's mine. The calculated manipulation left me speechless. In her mind, my penthouse, my $3.2 million property that I'd sacrificed everything for, was just another thing unfairly given to me that should rightfully be hers. The following week, I met Ryan's family at the rehearsal dinner. His father, Gordon Walsh, headed Walsh Development Group, one of Manhattan's largest luxury property developers. Throughout dinner, I caught him studying me with calculating eyes. Later, while helping the event staff arrange gift bags, I overheard Ryan speaking with his father in the venue's office. The property is locked down, Ryan was saying. Once we're married, the transfer will happen. You're sure about this? Gordon asked. Her father guaranteed it. He knows which side his bread is buttered on. The building is the key to the whole block, Gordon continued. Without it, the project stalls for years. I slipped away before they noticed me, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about Brittany wanting my home, it was about Ryan's family wanting my building. 2 days before the wedding, my mother arrived at my penthouse unannounced, her eyes red-rimmed. I need you to reconsider, she began, settling onto my sofa without invitation. Family should stick together. Is that why you're trying to take my home? She flinched. No one's taking anything. But Brittany deserves a good start in life. And I didn't? That's not what I meant, she dabbed at her eyes. Your sister loves this place. She's always dreamed of living somewhere like this. Then she should work for it, like I did. My mother looked around the penthouse, her gaze lingering on the custom bookshelves, the Italian marble kitchen island, the views of Central Park through the wall of windows. It's just a place, Deanna. Brick and mortar. But family is forever. After she left, I noticed she'd forgotten her wedding planning folder on the coffee table. Flipping through it, I found vendor contracts, seating charts, and at the back, an invitation I hadn't seen before. Please join Brittany and Ryan Walsh for a housewarming celebration at their new Manhattan penthouse. The date was set for 2 weeks after the wedding. They had already planned to move into my home before even securing my agreement. The audacity left me breathless. As I stood in the wedding hall watching the stranger in the charcoal suit approach me with determined steps, the entire scheme finally crystallized in my mind. This wasn't just about family favoritism anymore, it was something much bigger and more sinister. "Miss Reynolds," the stranger said quietly. "My name is Carter Williams. I think we need to talk immediately." The morning of Brittany's wedding had begun with forced smiles and mimosas in the bridal suite of the Plaza Hotel. Despite knowing what my family was planning, I'd shown up dutifully at 7 in the morning to help my sister prepare for her big day. "You came," Brittany said, sounding genuinely surprised when I entered the suite. "Of course I did," I replied. "I'm your sister." For a moment, something like guilt flickered across her face. Then, it vanished, replaced by the entitled princess expression she'd perfected over 28 years. "The makeup artist needs to start with you first," she instructed. "Your skin always takes more work than mine." 6 hours later, I stood in my emerald green bridesmaid dress, watching Brittany glide down the aisle on our father's arm. She looked radiant in her custom Vera Wang gown that had cost more than my first car. Ryan waited at the altar, handsome in his tailored tuxedo, the perfect picture of a devoted groom if you didn't know he was plotting to steal my home. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, a matrimonial kiss that earned appropriate applause from the 200 guests filling the plaza's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as we moved into the reception. I sat at the head table between my mother and Jenna, who'd been invited as a courtesy to me. Jenna squeezed my hand under the tablecloth. "You okay?" she whispered. "Not really," I admitted. "Want to get out of here? We could fake a work emergency." I shook my head. "I need to see this through." The dinner service concluded, and my father stood to give his toast. He looked distinguished in his tuxedo, silver hair perfectly coiffed, the picture of success and respectability. No one would guess he was about to publicly ambush his own daughter. "Welcome, everyone," he began, his voice warm with practiced charm. "Today is a day of celebration, not just of love between Brittany and Ryan, but of family." He spoke for several minutes about watching Brittany grow up, bringing appropriate laughter with stories of her childhood antics. Then his tone shifted. "As many of you know, our Brittany has always dreamed big. And as her father, I've always wanted to help those dreams come true." He raised his champagne flute. "Which brings me to a special announcement." My heart hammered against my ribs as 200 pairs of eyes focused on my father. Family means sacrifice. Family means generosity. Family means putting others before yourself. He turned to me, eyes glinting with expectation. "Which is why I'm so proud to announce that our Deanna will be giving her Manhattan penthouse to Brittany and Ryan as a wedding gift." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the ballroom. Brittany clapped her hands excitedly. Ryan smirked, exchanging a knowing look with his father. "The perfect start for the perfect couple," my father continued, "in the perfect home graciously provided by a loving sister." The room erupted in applause while I sat frozen, blood rushing in my ears. This was worse than I'd imagined. Not just a private demand, but a public spectacle designed to force my compliance through social pressure. My father gestured grandly toward me. "Deanna, would you like to say a few words about your generous gift?" He extended the microphone, his expression leaving no doubt about the expected response. My mother clutched my arm, whispering urgently, "Just say yes and we'll discuss details later." The silence stretched as hundreds of eyes bored into me. My sister's expression had transformed from excitement to growing embarrassment. Ryan's jaw tightened as he sensed the plan derailing. "Deanna?" my father prompted, a warning edge to his voice. "Your sister has always supported you. Time to return the favor." I opened my mouth, though I had no idea what would come out. That's when it happened. A chair scraped against the floor as someone stood from table 9. He was tall, with broad shoulders filling out his charcoal suit. Dark hair cut short, expression serious but not unkind. I'd never seen him before in my life. "Touch her assets again, he declared in a voice that carried throughout the ballroom, "and you'll lose yours." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face drained of color. "Excuse me?" he managed finally. "And who might you be?" The stranger walked purposefully toward our table, each step echoing in the silent hall. "Carter Williams, Financial Crimes Investigation Unit." He reached the head table and handed me a business card. "Miss Reynolds, I believe you and I need to have an immediate conversation. Your family has put you in significant legal jeopardy." My father recovered quickly, professional smile sliding back into place. "There must be some mistake. This is a private family celebration." "There's no mistake, Mr. Reynolds," Carter replied evenly. "And I suggest we move this discussion somewhere more private before things get uncomfortable for everyone here." Ryan's father had risen from his seat, face flushed with anger. "This is outrageous. Who invited you?" "No one invited me," Carter replied. "But I've been investigating your company for months, Mr. Walsh. Today's events are particularly interesting from an evidentiary standpoint." My sister burst into tears, the perfect culmination to her perfectly orchestrated wedding. "You're ruining everything," she sobbed at me. "You've always been jealous of me." I looked from my sister's tears to my father's barely contained rage to the stranger offering me an escape route from this nightmare. "I think," I said, rising from my seat, "that I'd like to hear what Mr. Williams has to say." I followed him through the whispering crowd, past shocked relatives and curious strangers, feeling the weight of 28 years of familial obligation lifting with each step. For once in my life, I was choosing myself over family expectations, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Behind us, I heard my father attempting damage control. "Just a misunderstanding, everyone. Please, enjoy the dessert course while we sort this out." But as the ballroom doors closed behind us, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Whatever Carter Williams was about to tell me would change my relationship with my family forever. And strangely, I was ready for it. Carter Williams led me to a quiet alcove in the hotel corridor, away from the sounds of the disrupted reception. His expression was serious but not unkind. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance, Miss Reynolds, but when I saw what was happening, I had to intervene." "Who are you really?" I asked. "And how do you know about my family?" Before he could answer, Jenna burst through the ballroom doors, scanning the corridor until she spotted us. "Deanna, are you okay?" She hurried over, eyeing Carter suspiciously. "What's happening?" "I'm still figuring that out," I replied. "Miss Reynolds," Carter began, "I'm with the Financial Crimes Investigation Unit of the FBI. We've been investigating your father's company, Reynolds Property Management, for the past 7 months." My stomach dropped. Investigating for what? Securities fraud, wire fraud, and several instances of misappropriation of client funds. He paused, allowing me to process this. "But more recently, we've been looking into a potential conspiracy involving Walsh Development Group, Ryan's family company," I whispered. He nodded. "Your penthouse building, the Westerly, is the key to a $100 million redevelopment project that Walsh has been planning for 3 years." "But the Westerly is a historic building," I protested. "It can't be demolished." "It can with the right variances, and if a developer owns more than 75% of the units," Carter explained. "Walsh currently owns or controls 68%. Your unit, because of its size and location, represents another 7%. Jenna stepped closer. "So they need Dina's penthouse to move forward with demolition?" "Precisely. And your father's company, Miss Reynolds, is in serious financial trouble. They've been insolvent for months, using new investor funds to pay returns to existing clients." "A Ponzi scheme," I whispered. "Yes. We believe your father arranged this marriage as a business transaction. Walsh would bail out Reynolds Property Management in exchange for securing your penthouse." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. That's why they've been pushing so hard. Carter reached into his jacket and removed a folder. "Last week, someone attempted to file transfer paperwork for your property. The signature was clearly forged." He showed me the document, a deed transfer with what was supposed to be my signature. It was close, but any careful examination would reveal it wasn't mine. "My father tried to forge my signature?" "We believe so. When that failed, they moved to Plan B, public pressure at the wedding to force your compliance." He glanced toward the ballroom doors. "I was here conducting surveillance. not expecting them to be so brazen. Jenna placed a protective hand on my shoulder. This is insane. Your own family tried to steal your home through fraud? The ballroom doors burst open again. My father stormed out, followed by Ryan and his father, their faces contorted with barely contained rage when they spotted us. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" my father demanded. "You've humiliated our family in front of everyone." Carter stepped forward, positioning himself between me and my father. "Mr. Reynolds, I strongly advise you not to make statements you'll regret." Ryan's father moved beside my father. "Whatever you think you know, you're mistaken. This is a private family matter." "Actually," Carter replied calmly, "conspiracy to commit property fraud is very much a federal matter." He turned to me. "Miss Reynolds, there's something else you should see." He pulled out his phone and played a security video. The footage showed my father and Ryan meeting with an older man in the lobby of the Westerly building 3 months ago. "That's Vincent Morello," Carter explained. "He specializes in pressuring holdout tenants in valuable properties. 2 years ago, he served time for coercion and fraudulent property transfers." I watched as the 3 men shook hands, my father smiling broadly at whatever Morello was saying. "They were planning this for months," I whispered. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. My own father. Ryan stepped forward, his wedding day smile replaced by cold calculation. "Deanna, you're overreacting. This is all just a misunderstanding between our families." "Is it?" I turned to him, anger finally overtaking shock. "Was marrying my sister part of the misunderstanding too? Or was that just convenient timing for your family's development plans?" His expression confirmed my suspicions before he could form a denial. "You never loved her," I realized aloud. "This whole wedding was just business." "Now wait a minute," my father interjected, panic creeping into his voice. "Let's all calm down and discuss this reasonably." "Like you were reasonable when you tried to publicly shame me into giving up my home?" I shot back. "Or when you forged my signature on transfer documents?" His face paled. "That's a serious accusation." "We have the documents, Mr. Reynolds," Carter stated. "And considerable evidence of conspiracy." My mother appeared in the doorway, her carefully applied makeup streaked with tears. "What's happening? Everyone's talking. Brittany is hysterical." She rushed to my father's side, ever the loyal supporter. I wondered how much she knew. "Mom," I asked quietly, "did you know about the forgery attempt?" Her eyes darted to my father before she answered. "I don't know what you're talking about." But her reaction told me everything. "You did know. You knew they were trying to steal my home." "Not steal," she protested. "Keep in the family. For Brittany's future." "And what about my future?" I demanded. "You've always been the strong one," she replied automatically. "Brittany needs more support." The familiar refrain suddenly sounded hollow after decades of repetition. I turned to Carter. "What happens now?" "I need to take formal statements from everyone involved," he replied, "and I strongly suggest you all retain separate legal counsel." "This is ridiculous," Ryan's father blustered. "Do you have any idea who I am in this city?" "Gordon Walsh, CEO of Walsh Development Group," Carter replied evenly. "Currently under investigation for multiple violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, alongside domestic conspiracy charges." As they argued, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from Jenna. "Check your email now." I pulled out my phone to find an email from Jenna sent just minutes ago with the subject line "Proof." Inside was a prenuptial agreement between Brittany and Ryan. Jenna had added a note. "Ryan's assistant sent this to me by mistake last week, thinking I was their wedding planner. Look at Section 7. I scrolled through the document until I found it. Section 7. The husband shall receive, as part of marital assets, any and all interest in the property known as Penthouse A, the Westerly building, upon successful transfer of said property from Deanna Reynolds to the wife. This transfer must be completed within 30 days of marriage, or financial considerations in Section 12 shall be rendered void." My sister had signed this. She had agreed to hand over my home to Ryan as part of their prenuptial agreement. I looked up from the phone, rage building within me. "Did you even read the prenup before you signed it, Dad? The one that transfers my home to Ryan, not Brittany?" My father's confident facade cracked. "What are you talking about?" I showed him the document on my phone. As he read, the color drained from his face. "This can't be right," he muttered. Ryan stepped forward to see the screen, then quickly stepped back. "That's a draft. It was revised." "Doesn't look like a draft to me," Jenna countered. "Looks fully executed with all signatures." My mother grabbed the phone. As she read, her hand flew to her mouth. "George, did you know about this?" For once, my father seemed genuinely shocked. "No, Ryan assured me the property would be in Brittany's name." Ryan's father cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion with our attorneys present." "Excellent suggestion," Carter replied. "In fact, I insist on it." As the argument intensified, a hotel staff member approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, but the bride is asking for everyone to return. The guests are getting concerned." I looked back toward the ballroom, imagining Brittany in her perfect dress, her perfect day unraveling, waiting for her family to return and fix everything as we always had. For the first time in my life, I chose differently. "Tell my sister I'm sorry," I said to the staff member, "but I won't be returning to the reception." I turned to Carter. "I'd like to make a formal statement now." As we walked away, I heard my father call after me, his voice breaking with something that might have been fear, might have been regret, but was definitely too little, too late. "Deanna, please, you can't do this to your family." I kept walking, each step taking me further from the patterns of a lifetime, toward an uncertain but authentic future. 3 hours later, I found myself back at the Plaza Hotel. After giving a preliminary statement at Carter's office, I'd agreed to a confrontation with my family. Carter believed it would yield valuable evidence, if properly monitored. We entered a private conference room where my immediate family waited. My father and mother sat on one side of a long table, while Brittany, still in her wedding dress, sat beside Ryan. Their parents flanked them like protective bookends. Everyone looked up when we entered, expressions ranging from anger to apprehension. "Deanna," my father began, standing, "let's put an end to this nonsense." Carter stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, I'd advise caution in your choice of words. This meeting is being recorded as part of an ongoing federal investigation." My father sank back into his chair, exchanging glances with Gordon Walsh. The dynamics in the room were clear now that I knew what to look for. This wasn't a family dispute, but a business negotiation gone wrong. "I just want to understand why," I said, taking a seat across from them. "Why would you try to take my home this way?" My father straightened his tie, slipping into what I now recognized as his investor presentation mode. "Deanna, you're misinterpreting a simple family matter. We only wanted what was best for everyone. By forging my signature? By ambushing me at Brittany's wedding? That signature issue was a misunderstanding," he replied smoothly. "As for today, I simply got carried away with fatherly enthusiasm." Jenna, who had insisted on accompanying me, made a disgusted sound. Fatherly enthusiasm doesn't usually involve public coercion. My mother reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. Her eyes widened with hurt. "Honey, we were just trying to help Brittany start her married life in a beautiful home. You've always been so independent, so capable. Your sister needs more support. So you decided to take what's mine rather than let her earn her own way?" "No one was taking anything," my father insisted. "It would have remained in the family." Carter placed a folder on the table. "Mr. Reynolds, we have evidence that you met with Vincent Morello to discuss ways to pressure your daughter into surrendering her property." My father's confident expression faltered. "I don't recall any such meeting." Carter opened the folder and slid across surveillance photos of my father shaking hands with Morello in the Westerly's lobby. "Perhaps this will refresh your memory." Gordon Walsh cleared his throat. "I believe we should continue this discussion with our attorneys present." "Absolutely," Carter agreed. "But first, I'd like Miss Reynolds to hear directly from her family about the true nature of this situation." I turned to Brittany, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. Her perfect makeup was streaked with tears, her wedding updo beginning to collapse. "Did you know, Brittany, about the prenup clause giving my home to Ryan, not you?" She looked at Ryan, then back to me. "It wasn't like that. Ryan said it was just a legal formality." "Did you read the document before signing it?" Her silence was answer enough. "And the wedding," I continued. "Was it real, or just a business arrangement between our families?" "How can you ask that?" she cried. "Of course it was real. Ryan loves me." Ryan shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. His father placed a warning hand on his arm. I turned to my father. What's really going on with your company? Carter says you're insolvent. The question hung in the air. My father's jaw tightened as he weighed his options. We've faced some temporary liquidity challenges, he admitted finally. Nothing serious. Just a cash flow issue that will resolve itself with our next investment round. That's not what your CFO told us, Carter interjected. According to him, you've been using new investor funds to pay returns to existing clients for at least 18 months. My father's face flushed with anger. Travis talked to you? That's a violation of his employment contract. It's also his legal obligation when federal investigators come calling, Carter replied calmly. He's been quite cooperative. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. George, what is he talking about? For the first time, I realized my mother might be as much a victim as I was. Mom, did you know about Dad's financial problems? There are no problems, my father snapped before she could answer. Just temporary setbacks. Is that why you took out a second mortgage on the family home without telling Mom? I asked, repeating information Carter had shared with me earlier. My mother gasped. What second mortgage? My father's expression confirmed the truth before he could formulate a denial. And Mom's inheritance from Grandma? I pressed. The money that was supposed to be in a trust for her retirement? That's enough, my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. George? My mother's voice was small. What did you do with my inheritance? The room fell silent, as decades of lies began unraveling before our eyes. Linda, my father said, reaching for my mother's hand. She pulled away. Everything I did was for this family. For our future. By stealing from me? She whispered. I was going to replace it, he insisted. The market turned against us temporarily, that's all. Ryan's father stood abruptly. I think we've heard enough. Ryan, we're leaving. Sit down, Mr. Walsh, Carter commanded. You're equally implicated in this conspiracy. This is absurd, Walsh blustered. My son wanted to marry this young woman. Her father and I have business dealings. There's nothing illegal about either fact. There is when those business dealings involve conspiracy to defraud, Carter replied. Your company needed Miss Reynolds' penthouse to move forward with demolishing the Westerly, a historically protected building. Brittany turned to Ryan, her expression horrified. Demolish? You said we were going to live there. Ryan finally spoke, his voice cool and detached. Plans change in real estate development, Brittany. It's just business. Just business? She stared at him. Our marriage is just business? Of course not, he replied unconvincingly. But the property was always going to be redeveloped. That was the agreement between our fathers. While the bride and groom weren't informed of the true nature of the arrangement, Carter noted. Interesting. I watched as Brittany's world collapsed around her, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy despite everything. She'd been a pawn in this game too, albeit a willing one. I don't understand, my mother said, looking between my father and Gordon Walsh. George, what did you promise these people? My father loosened his collar, sweat beading on his forehead. It's complicated, Linda. Actually, it's quite simple, Carter interjected. Your husband needed a financial bailout for his failing company. Walsh needed the final units in the Westerly building for his development project. Your husband couldn't deliver your daughter's penthouse through legitimate means, so they conspired to obtain it through coercion, fraud, and exploitation of family relationships. The clinical description of their scheme hung in the air like poison gas. And if I had given in today? I asked. What then? The transfer documents were prepared in advance, Carter replied. You would have signed them tonight, likely under continued pressure and emotional distress. By next week, you would have been homeless while the Walsh Company began preparations for demolition. What about the other residents? I asked. There are families who've lived there for generations. Mrs. Abernathy on the 4th floor is 93 years old. Walsh shrugged dismissively. Relocation packages would have been offered. The market dictates progress, Miss Reynolds. His callousness sent a chill through me. These men had been willing to destroy not just my life, but the lives of everyone in my building. I've heard enough, I said, standing. I'll be pressing charges for the forgery attempt and cooperating fully with the federal investigation. Deanna, please, my father pleaded. We can work this out as a family. Family? I laughed bitterly. Is that what we are? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I'm just another asset to be leveraged in your business dealings. Brittany stood suddenly, her wedding dress rustling. I didn't know, she said, voice breaking. About the demolition, about Ryan's real plans. I swear I didn't know. For the first time in our lives, I saw genuine remorse in my sister's eyes. But it was too little, too late. But you knew they were trying to take my home, I replied. You've spent your whole life taking things from me, Brittany. This was just the biggest heist yet. Ryan stood and placed his hand on Brittany's shoulder. We should go. Our guests are waiting. She shook his hand off violently. Don't touch me! Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me? His silence was devastating in its finality. Brittany turned to our parents, tears streaming down her face. You did this. You pushed me toward him, knowing it was just a business deal. My mother reached for her. Honey, no. We thought he loved you. Like you loved Dad? Brittany shot back. Enough to let him steal your inheritance? To let him mortgage your home without telling you? We're all just pieces on his chessboard. The truth of her words resonated through the room. For all our differences, Brittany and I had both been manipulated by our father our entire lives. Ladies, Gordon Walsh interrupted coldly, this emotional display isn't productive. Let's focus on finding a solution that works for everyone. The only solution, I replied, is for all of you to face the consequences of your actions. For once in our family history, the truth will come out. As I turned to leave, my father made one last desperate attempt. If you do this, Deanna, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? To see your father in prison? Your mother destitute? Your sister's marriage over before it's begun? I paused at the door and looked back at the man who had shaped so much of my life through manipulation and control. You destroyed this family, Dad. Not me. I'm just refusing to keep up the pretense any longer. As Carter and I walked out, I heard my mother's quiet sobs, Brittany's angry accusations, and the beginning of the end of the Reynolds family as we had known it. The truth was finally emerging, and while it was painful, it was also strangely liberating. For the first time in 32 years, I was choosing my own path forward, unburdened by the weight of family expectations and manipulations. Whatever came next would be on my terms, not theirs. The days following Brittany's wedding unfolded like scenes from a movie I never wanted to star in. Headlines in the New York Post screamed, Manhattan real estate mogul under federal investigation, while Page 6 gleefully detailed the wedding reception from hell, bride abandoned after FBI crashes party. I spent the first day holed up in my penthouse, blinds drawn, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. Jenna brought groceries and stayed overnight, fielding calls from concerned colleagues and curiously nosy acquaintances. Your father's called 17 times, she reported, scrolling through my missed calls. Your mother 12 times, Brittany 3 times. Even Ryan tried twice. What about the rest? I asked, gesturing to the dozens of other notifications. Mostly reporters. A few friends checking if you're okay. She handed me a glass of wine. You should probably talk to someone from your family eventually. Not yet, I replied. I need to process everything first. On day 3, I met with Patricia Coleman, a formidable attorney specializing in financial fraud cases. She listened intently as I recounted the entire saga, taking meticulous notes. Your father's actions constitute several serious crimes, she concluded. The attempted forgery alone carries significant penalties. Add conspiracy and wire fraud, and he's looking at substantial prison time. The reality of what that meant my father in prison hit me with unexpected force. Despite everything, some childish part of me still struggled with being the one to put him there. What about my mother? And Brittany? If they weren't active participants in the fraud, they may avoid criminal charges. But civil liability is another matter. Your mother, as a company officer on paper, could face significant financial penalties. I left Patricia's office with a temporary restraining order against my father and instructions to document any contact attempts from my family or the Walshes. That afternoon, Carter Williams called with an update. We've executed search warrants at your father's office and the Walsh Development headquarters, he reported. The evidence we're finding confirms everything we suspected, and then some. Your father's company has been insolvent for nearly 2 years. What about my mother's inheritance? And the house? He paused. I'm sorry to tell you this, but the money's gone. All of it. and the house has 2 mortgages totaling more than its market value. I sank onto my sofa, thoughts turning to my mother. For all her enabling of my father and Brittany, she didn't deserve financial ruin. There's something else, Carter continued. Your father appears to have been siphoning money from your grandmother's estate for years before she passed. The trust was nearly empty by the time your mother inherited it. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. My grandmother had worked her entire life as a school teacher, saving every penny for her only daughter's security. Does my mother know this yet? Not from us. But given the scope of the investigation, she'll find out soon. The next morning brought another surprise. My doorman called up to announce Amanda Walsh, Ryan's sister, was requesting to see me. Curious, I agreed. Amanda was Ryan's younger sister by 3 years. Where Ryan had always struck me as calculating and cold, Amanda seemed genuinely uncomfortable as she sat perched on the edge of my sofa. I'm sorry to show up unannounced, she began, declining my offer of coffee. But after what happened at the wedding, I felt I needed to talk to you directly. About what? About what my family did. What they were planning to do. She took a deep breath. I've never approved of my father's business tactics, but this went beyond anything I could ignore. She reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. This contains emails between my father and Ryan discussing the Westerly project. They detail exactly how they planned to use Brittany to get your penthouse and what they intended to do once they controlled the building. I stared at the small device. Why are you giving me this? Because it's the right thing to do, she replied simply. And because I'm tired of watching my father and brother destroy people's lives for profit. The USB drive contained a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Emails dating back 18 months detailed the entire conspiracy. How they'd identified my father's company as financially vulnerable. How they'd researched me and Brittany to exploit our family dynamics. Even how Ryan had been coached to romance Brittany specifically to facilitate the property transfer. Most disturbing were the plans for the Westerly once they gained control. Despite promises of luxury renovations, they actually intended to demolish the historic building and construct a high-rise hotel and shopping complex. The existing residents, many elderly or on fixed incomes, would be forced out with minimal compensation. I forwarded everything to Carter and Patricia, then spent the evening researching ways to protect the other residents in my building. That's when my mother called. After a week of ignoring her attempts to contact me, something made me answer. Deanna? Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. Please don't hang up. I'm here, I replied cautiously. I need to see you. There are things I need to say in person. We met the following day at a quiet cafe in the West Village, far from our usual haunts. My mother looked like she'd aged years in a single week, hair unstyled, minimal makeup, dark circles under her eyes. Your father had a heart attack yesterday, she said without preamble. A mild one. He's stable now. My body tensed. I'm sorry to hear that. The doctors say it was stress, induced. Her hands trembled around her coffee cup. The FBI seized everything. Our accounts are frozen. The house. She trailed off. I know about the mortgages, Mom, and Grandma's trust. She nodded, tears welling. I had no idea. I trusted him completely with our finances. She looked up at me. I know you won't believe this, but I didn't know about the forgery attempt. When he told me you'd agreed to give Brittany the penthouse, I believed him. But you knew he was pressuring me. You participated in it. Yes, she admitted. I've always followed his lead with the girls. It seemed easier that way. A tear slipped down her cheek. I failed you, Deanna. I've been failing you your entire life by allowing him to favor Brittany, by not standing up for you. It was the first genuine acknowledgement of the family dynamic I'd ever heard from her. Where's Brittany now? I asked. Staying with a friend. The honeymoon was canceled. She's talking about annulment. My mother dabbed at her eyes. She feels betrayed by everyone, Ryan. Your father, me. Even you. Me? I'm the victim here. I know, but in Brittany's mind, you exposed the truth at the worst possible moment. The truth was going to come out regardless. Better before she was legally tied to Ryan than after. My mother nodded slowly. You're right. I see that now. She reached for my hand. Deanna, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but your father's company had legitimate clients too. People who will lose everything. Is there any way? I withdrew my hand. Don't. Don't ask me to clean up his mess. Of course. She looked down. I'm sorry. As I watched my mother struggle to hold herself together, I realized she too was a victim of my father's manipulation, albeit a more willing one than I had been. Where are you staying? I asked. With my sister in Queens. The FBI let me take some personal belongings from the house, but not much. 2 days later, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Ryan. Deanna, we need to talk. We have nothing to discuss, I replied coldly. I'm willing to testify against your father and mine, he said, ignoring my response. In exchange for immunity. Why would you turn on your own father? He laughed bitterly. Because he's making me the scapegoat, claiming I acted alone in the Westerly project. His voice hardened. I have documentation proving otherwise. Recordings of meetings where he and your father discussed the entire plan, including the part about demolishing the building. Everything, including promises made to various officials to fast-track permits once the building was acquired. He paused. I also know about other projects they've done this way. Other families they've manipulated and defrauded. I relayed the information to Carter, who was keenly interested in Ryan's offer. This could strengthen our case significantly, he noted, particularly against the bigger players in these development schemes. While the legal proceedings advanced, I focused on protecting the other residents in the Westerly. With help from a tenant rights attorney, we formed an association and filed for additional historic preservation protections for the building. During a community meeting in the building's lobby, I found myself addressing my neighbors, people I'd passed in hallways for years but barely knew. The developers wanted this building because it represents prime Manhattan real estate, I explained. But what makes it valuable to us is that it's our home. And I promise you, as long as I have anything to say about it, it will remain that way. Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly resident from the 4th floor, approached me afterward with tears in her eyes. My husband and I moved here in 1957, she said, squeezing my hand. Thank you for fighting for us when no one else would. It was the first moment since this ordeal began that I felt something positive might come from it after all. A week later, legal proceedings began in earnest. My father, released from the hospital, appeared ashen and diminished at the preliminary hearing. He attempted to approach me in the courthouse hallway, but my attorney quickly intervened. What surprised me most was seeing my mother sitting not beside him, but on the opposite side of the courtroom. When our eyes met, she gave me a small, sad smile. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was acknowledgement of a shared pain and the beginning of a long road towards something new. As summer turned to fall, the legal battles continued. My father's company was officially declared bankrupt, with receivers appointed to try to recover funds for defrauded investors. Ryan did indeed turn state's evidence against both our fathers, providing recordings that proved instrumental in building the prosecution's case. Throughout it all, Carter Williams remained a steady presence, updating me on the investigation and, increasingly, checking on my well-being beyond the case itself. How are you holding up? He asked, during one of our now regular coffee meetings. Better than I expected, I admitted. It's strange, but there's a kind of freedom in having everything out in the open after so many years of manipulation. He nodded. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is acknowledging the wound exists in the first place. As the criminal cases progressed, I made a difficult decision regarding my mother and sister. During a tense meeting at Patricia's office, I outlined terms for helping them restart their lives' financial support, conditional on family therapy, and complete honesty moving forward. I'm not interested in punishment, I told them. But I won't enable harmful patterns either. My mother agreed immediately. Brittany, still struggling with the collapse of her wedding and engagement, took longer to come around. But eventually, she too acknowledged her part in the family dynamic that had led us here. I always knew Dad favored me, she admitted during our first therapy session. And I used it to get what I wanted. It was easier than earning things on my own. It wasn't a complete transformation. Decades of entitlement wouldn't disappear overnight. But it was a start. As for the Westerly building, our tenant association successfully petitioned for enhanced historical protection, effectively blocking any future demolition attempts. When Walsh Development was forced to sell their shares in the building as part of the settlement, I worked with a non-profit housing trust to purchase them, ensuring the building would remain affordable for its long-term residents. 6 months after the disastrous wedding, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My father, now out on bail awaiting trial, had aged years and months. Gone was the commanding presence I'd feared my entire life, replaced by a diminished man facing the consequences of his actions. "Diana," he began haltingly, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness." "You're right," I replied coolly. "You don't." He nodded, accepting this. "I just wanted you to know that I'm pleading guilty. No deals, no reduced charges. I'm taking full responsibility." It was the first genuinely honorable thing I could remember him doing. "Why now?" I asked. He looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline he'd once sought to conquer. "Because it's time I faced the truth about who I've been. What I've done to our family. To you." As he turned to leave, I found myself speaking. "Dad." He paused, hope briefly illuminating his face. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said honestly. "I don't know if I ever will be. But I hope you find a way to make peace with yourself." It wasn't absolution, but it was acknowledgement. For both of us, it would have to be enough for now. 1 year after the wedding that wasn't, I stood in my penthouse living room, surveying the space that had almost been taken from me. The evening sun cast golden light across the hardwood floors, illuminating the life I'd built for myself through determination and, more recently, courage. The legal proceedings had concluded 3 weeks earlier. My father received an 8-year sentence for fraud, conspiracy, and financial crimes. Gordon Walsh faced similar charges, with additional counts related to building code violations and bribing public officials. Ryan, in exchange for his testimony, received probation and community service. I'd invited my mother and Brittany to dinner, a tentative new tradition we'd established in recent months. Once a month, we gathered to rebuild what had been broken, to forge new relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation. The doorbell rang promptly at 7. My mother arrived first, bearing a homemade apple pie, a peace offering of sorts. At 59, Linda Reynolds was discovering independence for the first time in her adult life. She'd found a modest apartment in Brooklyn and a part-time job at a bookstore. The confident woman emerging from my father's shadow was someone I was slowly growing to respect. "The place looks lovely," she commented, taking in the fresh flowers and set table. "You always did have an eye for design." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang again. Brittany entered cautiously, as though still unsure of her welcome despite our months of reconciliation work. "I brought wine," she offered, handing me the bottle. "The kind you like, not the sweet stuff I usually drink." It was a small gesture but meaningful, an acknowledgement of my preferences rather than an expectation that I would accommodate hers. After 30 years of our relationship revolving around Brittany's wants and needs, these small shifts represented significant progress. We settled into dinner, conversation flowing more easily than it once had. Brittany, now working as an assistant at a fashion magazine, a job she'd secured without family connections, was animated as she described her latest project. "It's the first time my boss has let me take the lead on a feature," she explained. "I'm terrified of messing it up." "You won't," I assured her. "You've always had a good eye for trends." She looked momentarily surprised by the compliment, then smiled. "Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." My mother watched our exchange with tears shimmering in her eyes. "What?" I asked gently. "I just never thought we'd be here," she admitted. "After everything that happened, I was sure we'd never be a family again." "We're not the family we were," I pointed out. "And that's a good thing. We're building something healthier." Our weekly therapy sessions had helped us identify and begin to dismantle the toxic patterns that had defined our relationships for decades. My mother was learning to relate to both daughters as individuals rather than as extensions of my father's expectations. Brittany was developing a sense of identity separate from being the golden child. And I was learning that boundaries could exist alongside forgiveness. As we cleared the dinner dishes, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. "Are we expecting someone else?" my mother asked. I smiled. "Actually, yes. I invited Carter to join us for dessert. I hope that's okay." Brittany raised an eyebrow. "Carter Williams? The FBI agent who crashed my wedding?" "The very same," I confirmed. "Though technically he didn't crash it, he was conducting surveillance." "And now he's coming for dessert," Brittany noted, with the beginning of a smirk. "Interesting development." I felt a blush creeping up my neck as I went to answer the door. Carter stood in the hallway, looking far more relaxed in jeans and a sweater than he had in the charcoal suit I'd first seen him in. "I brought ice cream," he said, holding up a bag. "I wasn't sure what goes with apple pie." "Vanilla is perfect," I assured him, taking the bag. "Come in. My mother and sister are eager to meet you under less dramatic circumstances." The evening progressed with surprising ease. Carter's quiet confidence and dry humor blended well with our family dynamic. He shared stories about growing up in Michigan, his decision to join the FBI after college, and his specialization in financial crimes. "I've seen a lot of cases like your father's," he told my mother gently. "The victims often include the perpetrator's own family. You shouldn't blame yourself for not seeing the signs." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "That's kind of you to say. But I chose not to see a lot of things over the years. Not just about George's business, but about how he treated our daughters. I have to live with that." "The important thing," I interjected, "is that you're making different choices now." After dessert, Brittany helped me load the dishwasher while my mother and Carter chatted in the living room. "He seems nice," Brittany observed quietly. "Are you two?" "We're friends," I replied, though the warm feeling in my chest suggested the potential for more. "He's been supportive throughout everything." "He looks at you like you hung the moon," she noted. "Trust me, I know that look. I used to think Ryan looked at me that way." Her voice caught slightly, until I realized it was all calculated. I placed a hand on her arm. "I'm sorry about how everything happened with Ryan. You deserved better." She shook her head. "I got exactly what I deserved. I was so focused on the big wedding, the perfect life, that I didn't see who he really was." She glanced toward the living room. "But Carter seems genuine. And after everything you've been through, you deserve someone who sees your worth." It was possibly the most selfless thing I'd ever heard my sister say. Progress indeed. Later that evening, after my mother and sister had departed, Carter and I stood on my rooftop garden overlooking the twinkling lights of Manhattan. "Your family is healing," he observed. "It's not something I often get to see in my line of work." "We're trying," I agreed. "It's not perfect, but it's real. For the first time, I feel like they're seeing me, the actual me, not just the responsible daughter they could take for granted." He turned to face me, his expression serious. "I saw you from the moment I met you, Deanna. Standing in that ballroom, refusing to be manipulated or controlled. It was one of the bravest things I've ever witnessed." The genuine admiration in his voice warmed me more than the spring evening. "I never thanked you properly," I said, "for standing up that day, for saying what you said." He smiled. "Touch her assets again, and you'll lose yours?" Not my most eloquent moment, but it seemed to get the point across. I laughed. It certainly silenced the room. "I'd been investigating your father for months," he explained, "watching the pressure he was putting on you. I wasn't planning to intervene so publicly, but when I saw what was happening at the reception," he shook his head. "Something in me couldn't let it continue." "Well, I'm grateful you followed that instinct." We stood in comfortable silence, looking out over the city. The year had brought profound changes to my life, painful revelations, broken relationships, but also new beginnings and unexpected strength. "The tenant association meeting went well yesterday," I mentioned. "The Westerly is officially designated as affordable housing for the next 99 years. No developer can ever demolish it or force residents out." "That's incredible," Carter replied. "You turned a personal victory into protection for everyone in the building." It felt right. My home was nearly stolen from me. I couldn't let that happen to Mrs. Abernathy or the Rodriguez family or any of the others. Using part of my savings and a grant from a housing preservation fund, I'd established a trust to maintain the Westerly's historic character while keeping rents affordable for current residents. What had begun as a fight to keep my own home had evolved into a mission to protect others. "You know," Carter said thoughtfully, "when we first met, you were fighting to hold on to what was yours. Now you're fighting to help others keep what's theirs. That's a powerful transformation." His observation struck me deeply. The ordeal had changed me, not by hardening me, as it might have, but by connecting me more deeply to my own values and to the community around me. "I've been thinking about starting a nonprofit," I confided, "to help victims of real estate fraud. So many people don't have the resources or knowledge to fight back when developers or con artists target them." You'd be amazing at that, he encouraged. Your experience in real estate combined with what you've been through personally, you could help a lot of people. As we talked through the possibilities, I felt a sense of purpose crystallizing. The pain my family had caused could be transformed into something meaningful, something that helped others avoid similar situations. There's something else I've been meaning to ask you, Carter said, his tone shifting. The investigation is completely closed now, all cases resolved, which means you're no longer professionally connected to my family's case, I finished for him. Exactly. He took a step closer. So, I was wondering if you might be interested in dinner sometime. Just the two of us. The butterflies in my stomach took me by surprise. After a year focused on legal battles and family healing, the possibility of something purely positive, a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine attraction, felt both exciting and slightly terrifying. I'd like that, I answered honestly. His smile in response was worth every difficult moment of the past year. Later that night, after Carter had gone, I stood in my living room, taking in the space that represented so much. My penthouse wasn't just property, it was the physical manifestation of my independence, my refusal to be controlled or manipulated, my right to determine my own path. But I'd learned something even more valuable than property rights this past year. I discovered my own voice, my own boundaries, and the strength to enforce them. I'd learned that family could be rebuilt on healthier foundations if everyone was willing to do the difficult work of honesty and accountability. And perhaps most surprisingly, I discovered that trauma, when faced directly, could be transformed into wisdom and purpose. My father had attempted to publicly humiliate me into surrendering what was mine. Instead, he'd inadvertently set me on a path to becoming more authentically myself than I'd ever been before. The greatest gift, ironically, had come from his greatest betrayal, the freedom to define myself on my own terms. As I prepared for bed, I caught sight of a framed photo I'd recently placed on my nightstand, a new one of my mother, Brittany, and me at Christmas, our first holiday as this new version of our family. We weren't perfect, we never would be, but we were real now, in a way we'd never been when my father orchestrated our family life. Sometimes the most meaningful victories aren't the ones that happen in courtrooms or corporate boardrooms, but in the quiet spaces of our own hearts, when we finally claim the right to be ourselves, to speak our truth, and to build lives of integrity even when, especially when, those we love try to demand otherwise. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure to protect what's rightfully yours? Or witness someone being manipulated by those who should have protected them? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, remember to like, subscribe, and share with others who might need encouragement to stand their ground. Thank you for listening to my journey from manipulation to empowerment. I hope it inspires you to honor your own boundaries and recognize your own worth, no matter who tries to diminish it.